Hollywood sold us the dream, fame, beauty, applause. But behind some of its brightest legends were children broken by ambition, parents blinded by control, and families destroyed in silence. What if the stars we worshipped were really survivors of the very spotlight that made them famous? Number 1. Patty Duke, the girl who fought her way back. Not every Hollywood story ends in collapse. Some become stories of survival. Patty Duke achieved more before adulthood than most people achieve in a lifetime. Success arrived early, bringing fame, recognition, and opportunities beyond imagination. But success can be dangerous when a child has no control over it. The adults surrounding Patty managed nearly every aspect of her life. Decisions were made for her. Boundaries disappeared. Trust became complicated. As the years passed, the pressure left deep emotional scars. Confusion replaced certainty. Pain replaced security. For a long time, it seemed as though Hollywood had claimed another victim. But Patty's story took a different path. Instead of allowing her struggles to define her, she confronted them. She spoke openly about mental health, personal battles, and the realities many people preferred to ignore. That honesty became its own form of courage, because survival isn't always dramatic. Sometimes survival means telling the truth after years of silence. Patty Duke reminds us that strength is not found in avoiding pain. It's found in facing it. And in a town built on illusion, that may be the bravest performance of all. Number 2. Anthony Perkins, the inheritance of silence. Some families pass down wealth. Others pass down wounds. Anthony Perkins spent much of his life portraying characters haunted by fear, loneliness, and secrets. Audiences remember him as unforgettable, a man capable of revealing darkness with nothing more than a glance. What few people understood was how familiar that darkness felt to him. Anthony lost his father, actor Osgood Perkins, at a young age. Yet even before that loss, the emotional bond between father and son had never fully formed. Love felt distant. Approval felt uncertain. The connection every child seeks remained frustratingly out of reach. Children rarely escape the lessons they learn from absence. They often repeat them. As Anthony grew older, fame gave him success, admiration, and recognition. But it could not teach him what had never been modeled for him. Emotional openness remained difficult. Vulnerability felt dangerous. The walls he built to protect himself became the same walls separating him from others, including his own children. The tragedy of Anthony Perkins isn't simply that he struggled with connection. It's that he understood loneliness so well, yet couldn't always prevent it from spreading to the people he loved. This is how cycles survive, not through cruelty, not through bad intentions, but through patterns so deeply rooted that they begin to feel normal. A child grows up feeling unseen, then becomes an adult who struggles to truly see others. Perhaps that's what makes this story so unsettling. Number 3. Dennis Hopper, the fire that burned too bright. To Hollywood, he was a rebel, an artist who refused to follow rules. His performances were unpredictable, his creativity undeniable, and his presence impossible to ignore. He represented freedom in its most intoxicating form. But freedom without limits can become its own kind of prison. Behind the image of the fearless visionary was a man at war with himself. Anger addiction and emotional turbulence followed him through much of his life, leaving a trail of broken relationships and fractured trust. The people who loved him often found themselves caught between two versions of the same man. One was brilliant, passionate, and deeply alive. The other was volatile, unpredictable, and impossible to reach. His children grew up navigating that uncertainty, never quite knowing which version would walk through the door. The tragedy of Dennis Hopper isn't that he lacked talent. It is that talent alone could never quiet the chaos inside him. Hollywood often romanticizes troubled geniuses. It turns their struggles into mythology and their pain into legend. But families experience those stories differently. They don't live with the myth. They live with the consequences. As the years passed, Dennis eventually sought sobriety and tried to repair what had been damaged. There were moments of reflection, moments of regret, and moments when he finally seemed to understand the cost of a life lived at full speed. But some fires leave marks long after they stop burning. Perhaps that's the lesson hidden inside his story. Brilliance can illuminate a room. It can inspire generations. It can change art forever. But without balance, it can also consume the very people standing closest to the flame. And sometimes the hardest thing for a gifted person to learn is that being extraordinary is not the same as being present. The world remembers the genius. Families remember the aftermath. Number 4. Errol Flynn, the man who never grew up. Errol Flynn was the embodiment of Hollywood fantasy. On screen, he was fearless, charming, and larger than life. He swung from ropes, fought impossible battles, and won hearts with a smile that seemed effortless. Audiences saw a hero. But heroes are often easier to play than fathers. Behind the glamour and endless stories of adventure was a man who treated life as a game one where responsibility always seemed less exciting than freedom. Wit became a shield, humor became an escape, and sincerity was often buried beneath sarcasm. For his children, affection could feel unpredictable. Conversations that should have offered comfort sometimes turned into jokes. Vulnerability was met with mockery. Emotional closeness remained just out of reach. Perhaps Flynn spent so much of his life performing confidence because he feared what might happen if the performance stopped. After all, adventure is exciting. Relationships are demanding. One asks you to conquer the world. The other asks you to reveal yourself. The tragedy of Errol Flynn isn't that he lived recklessly. It's that he never seemed to slow down long enough to build the deeper connections that outlast fame. Because charm can attract people, but it cannot keep them close. As the years passed, his legend only grew. New generations remembered the swashbuckling icon, the rebel, the romantic adventurer. Yet the people who knew him best remembered something different. A man who could cross oceans, but struggled to cross the emotional distance between himself and his family. Number 5. Jodie Foster, the child who learned to hide. Most child stars are taught how to perform. Jodie Foster learned how to disappear. From an early age, she understood something many adults never do: fame is not the same as freedom. While Hollywood celebrated her intelligence and extraordinary talent, Jodie quietly studied the machinery surrounding her. She watched what happened to young stars who believed every compliment. She saw careers collapse under public obsession. She witnessed lives consumed by attention. So she built walls, not walls of arrogance, walls of survival. Unlike many children raised in the spotlight, Jodie refused to let fame become her identity. She protected her privacy with remarkable discipline, revealing only what she chose and nothing more. The world wanted access. She chose boundaries. Perhaps that's why her story feels different from so many Hollywood tragedies. She understood that attention can be addictive. The applause can become a drug. Public approval can quietly replace self-worth. But Jodie recognized the danger early. Her greatest achievement was never an award-winning performance. It was preserving a self that existed beyond the cameras. Because in Hollywood, everyone learns how to be seen. Very few learn how to protect the parts of themselves that should remain unseen. And sometimes survival isn't about stepping into the spotlight. It's about knowing when to step away from it. Number 6. Anthony Hopkins, The Choice of Solitude. Not every family breaks apart because of conflict. Sometimes it breaks apart because of distance. Anthony Hopkins has spent a lifetime exploring the darkest corners of human nature through his performances. On screen, he mastered complexity, portraying characters filled with contradictions, intelligence, and emotional depth. Yet in his personal life, he often spoke with remarkable detachment about estrangement and separation. For many people, family remains a bond that survives almost anything. For Hopkins, life seemed to teach a different lesson. People change, relationships end, and sometimes those endings become permanent. His story is unsettling because it challenges a belief many of us hold dear, that family connections will always find a way back. Sometimes they don't. The tragedy here is not anger. It is acceptance, a quiet resignation that can feel colder than conflict itself. Perhaps years of seeking control through art made emotional vulnerability harder to embrace. Perhaps solitude became a place of comfort rather than fear. Whatever the reason, Hopkins' story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Not everyone measures love in the same way. Some people spend their lives chasing connection. Others spend their lives learning to live without it. And occasionally, the loneliest choice is the one made willingly. Number 7. Marlon Brando, The Ghost of a Broken Childhood. The world saw a revolutionary. His family saw a man haunted by his past. Marlon Brando transformed acting forever. He brought a raw, emotional honesty to the screen that changed Hollywood itself. His performances felt real because they came from somewhere real. Pain. Long before fame arrived, Brando grew up in a home marked by instability, neglect, and emotional wounds that never fully healed. Success made him powerful. It did not make him whole. As the years passed, the struggles that shaped his childhood seemed to follow him into adulthood. Relationships became complicated. Family life became turbulent. The very wounds he once suffered began to echo through the next generation. This is one of the cruelest realities of trauma. What hurts us can eventually hurt others, not because we want it to, because pain has a way of repeating itself when it remains unresolved. The tragedies that later touched Brando's family cast a long shadow over his final years. Behind the legend stood a man forced to confront the consequences of a lifetime spent carrying burdens he never truly escaped. Perhaps that's why his story feels less like a Hollywood tale and more like an ancient tragedy. A gifted man trying to outrun his past, only to discover that the past had been running beside him the entire time. Because fame can change almost everything, except the wounds we refuse to face. Number 8. Francis Ford Coppola and Sofia Coppola. What if your greatest opportunity also became your greatest burden? Few filmmakers have shaped modern cinema the way Francis Ford Coppola did. His work changed Hollywood forever, turning him into a creative giant whose influence stretched across generations. For most people, having a father like that would seem like a gift. For Sofia Coppola, it was far more complicated. Growing up, she watched genius up close. She saw the obsession, the perfectionism, and the relentless pursuit of greatness that fueled her father's success. But when she stepped into the public eye herself, she discovered something difficult. The world wasn't looking at her, it was comparing her. Every achievement carried an invisible asterisk. Every mistake became evidence that she didn't belong. And when criticism arrived, it arrived loudly. For a young artist, there are few heavier burdens than trying to find your own voice while standing in the shadow of someone the world considers legendary. Yet Sophia chose a different path. Instead of competing with her father's legacy, she built her own. Quietly, patiently, authentically. The beauty of this story is that it isn't about rebellion. It's about transformation. A daughter taking expectations that could have crushed her and turning them into something uniquely her own. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't fame. It's the courage to become something different from the people who came before you. And sometimes the strongest way to honor a legacy is not to repeat it. It's to evolve beyond it. Number 9. Drew Barrymore, the child who raised herself. What happens when a child becomes an adult before she has the chance to be a child? For most people, childhood is a time of protection, a brief season where mistakes are forgiven and innocence is allowed to grow. For Drew Barrymore, childhood happened under a spotlight. Before she was old enough to understand fame, she had already become one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. Audiences fell in love with her smile. Studios saw a phenomenon. The media saw a story they couldn't stop following. But fame arrived years before maturity, and that changed everything. While other children were learning who they wanted to become, Drew was being introduced to a world filled with adults, expectations, temptations, and attention far beyond her years. The boundaries that should have protected her often seemed to disappear. The result was a childhood lived at adult speed. Parties replaced playgrounds. Headlines replaced privacy. Survival replaced innocence. To the public, her struggles became entertainment. Every mistake was photographed. Every setback became a story. Yet beneath the tabloid chaos was something much simpler. A young girl trying to find stability in a world that rewarded instability. The remarkable thing about Drew Barrymore's story is not that she fell. Many child stars do. It's that she found a way back. Piece by piece, she rebuilt a life that belonged to her rather than to Hollywood's expectations. Perhaps that's why her story resonates so deeply. Number 10. Henry Fonda, the father who could never say it. Some children spend their entire lives waiting for a single sentence. I'm proud of you. Henry Fonda was the embodiment of quiet strength. On screen, he represented integrity, wisdom, and moral certainty. Audiences trusted him instinctively. He played men who stood for justice, honor, and compassion. But the people closest to him knew a different version. One defined not by cruelty, but by distance. For his daughter Jane Fonda, growing up often felt like standing outside a locked door, hoping one day it might open. Her father could discuss politics, history, and ideas with remarkable passion. Yet when it came to emotions, he seemed to retreat into silence. The problem wasn't that Henry lacked love. It was that he struggled to express it. And sometimes unspoken love can feel painfully similar to no love at all. As Jane grew older, she chased achievement with relentless determination. Awards followed. Recognition followed. Success followed. Yet beneath every accomplishment lingered a deeper question. Would this finally be enough? Would this finally earn the approval she had spent years seeking? The tragedy of Henry Fonda's story is not one of conflict. It's one of missed connection. A father and daughter who cared for one another, yet often spoke different emotional languages. One generation believed feelings should remain private. The next desperately needed them to be shared. Perhaps that's why their story resonates far beyond Hollywood. because many families understand this kind of distance. No shouting, no dramatic betrayal, just years of silence slowly becoming a wall. In time, there were moments of reconciliation, moments when age softened old defenses. But some lessons arrive late. Number 11. Tippi Hedren. When a mother tries to rewrite her own story. Some parents want their children to succeed. Others want their children to succeed where they failed. The difference may seem small, but it can change an entire life. Tippi Hedren was once one of Hollywood's most captivating stars. Elegant, talented, and unforgettable, she appeared destined for a career that would last forever. Instead, circumstances beyond her control altered that path, leaving behind dreams that never fully disappeared. Years later, those unfinished dreams found a new home. Her daughter, Melanie Griffith. From an early age, Melanie grew up surrounded by movie sets, famous faces, and the seductive promise of Hollywood. The industry wasn't something she discovered. It was the world she inherited. Tippi wanted her daughter to thrive. She wanted her to have opportunities. She wanted her to reach heights she herself had struggled to maintain. But sometimes love becomes complicated when it mixes with regret. The line between guidance and projection begins to blur. Children stop living their own story and start carrying pieces of someone else's. As Melanie entered adulthood, she found herself exposed to situations far beyond her years. Fame arrived early, but so did confusion, instability, and emotional turbulence. The tragedy of this story isn't rooted in bad intentions. It's rooted in unfinished dreams. Number 12. Diana Barrymore. Born into a legacy she never chose. She was born into Hollywood royalty. The Barrymore family was already legendary, a dynasty of talent, charisma, and larger-than-life personalities. Before Diana ever stepped onto a stage, expectations had already been written for her. The world assumed greatness was inevitable. After all, she was John Barrymore's daughter. But inheritance can be a burden disguised as a gift. Growing up in the shadow of a famous parent often means competing with someone who isn't even in the room. Every achievement is compared. Every mistake is magnified. Every struggle becomes evidence that you are either living up to the legacy or failing it. For Diana, the pressure was relentless. She possessed beauty, talent, and opportunity. Yet beneath the glamour lived a young woman searching for an identity separate from the family name attached to her. The public wanted another Barrymore legend. Diana wanted to be herself. Those are not always the same thing. As the years passed, personal struggles began to eclipse professional success. Fame offered attention, but not peace. Recognition offered visibility, but not belonging. The expectations never disappeared. They simply grew heavier. The tragedy of Diana Barrymore isn't that she lacked potential. It's that she inherited a spotlight before she had the chance to discover who she was outside of it. And perhaps that's why her story feels so haunting. Number 13. Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli. When love carries a wound. Children don't just inherit their parents' features. Sometimes they inherit their struggles. By the time Liza Minnelli entered the world, Judy Garland was already a legend. Her voice had captivated generations. Her performances had become timeless, and her name carried the weight of Hollywood history. But legends rarely leave their pain behind. Behind Judy's brilliance were years of exhaustion, insecurity, and emotional battles that had begun long before fame arrived. Liza grew up watching a mother adored by millions while privately fighting storms few people could see. The love between them was real. So was the pressure. Imagine trying to discover who you are while standing beside one of the most famous women in the world. Every success invites comparison. Every failure feels magnified. For Liza, admiration and expectation arrive together. Yet what makes this story tragic is not conflict, it's repetition. The same industry that had taken so much from Judy now welcomed her daughter with open arms. The spotlight that once consumed one generation began reaching for the next. Perhaps that's how family wounds survive. Not through intention, not through malice, but through patterns nobody recognizes until they're already repeating. Judy wanted better for her daughter, like most parents do. But some battles leave marks so deep they quietly shape the future. In the end, their story became more than a tale about fame. It became a reminder that love can be genuine while pain still travels forward. And sometimes the hardest inheritance to escape is the one you never asked to receive. Number 14. Charlie Chaplin, the genius who controlled everything. Charlie Chaplin spent a lifetime making the world laugh. Yet behind the laughter was a man who feared losing control. Born into poverty and uncertainty, Chaplin learned early that survival depended on discipline, determination, and absolute self-reliance. Those lessons helped transform him into one of the most influential artists in history. But the traits that build greatness do not always build healthy families. As his fame grew, so did his need to shape the world around him. On film sets, every detail mattered. Every movement was calculated. Every scene existed according to his vision. Control became a habit. Then it became a way of life. For his children, growing up under the shadow of such an extraordinary figure was both a privilege and a challenge. How do you develop your own identity when the person at the center of the family is larger than history itself? The answer is not always easy. Because legends occupy space, sometimes more space than anyone realizes. The tragedy of Charlie Chaplin's story is not cruelty, it's gravity. The immense pull created by a towering personality that influences everyone nearby. His children loved him. They admired him. But they also lived beneath the weight of expectations attached to a name recognized across the world. Perhaps that's why this story feels different from so many others. It isn't about abuse. It isn't about abandonment. It's about the hidden cost of greatness. Because extraordinary talent can inspire generations, yet it can also cast a shadow so large that the people closest to it spend years searching for sunlight of their own. And sometimes, becoming yourself is hardest when the world already belongs to your father. Number 15. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye possessed one of the most extraordinary voices in music history. His songs spoke of love, hope, faith, and human understanding. Millions found comfort in his music because it seemed to come from a place of profound emotional truth. It did. But that truth carried pain. Behind the legendary voice stood a son raised in fear. His father, a strict and deeply controlling preacher, ruled through intimidation rather than compassion. Home was not a place of safety. It was a place of tension. As Marvin grew older, music became more than a career. It became an escape, a way to express emotions he had never been allowed to speak openly. Yet success could not erase the scars left by childhood. The fear, self-doubt, and emotional conflict remained woven into the fabric of his life, even as his fame reached extraordinary heights. The tragedy of Marvin Gaye's story is not simply how it ended. It is how long the battle lasted. For years, he searched for peace through music, spirituality, relationships, and success. Yet the conflict that began at home continued to follow him. like an echo, like a shadow, like a wound refusing to close. Perhaps that's why his songs still resonate today. They weren't just performances, they were confessions, the sound of a man trying to transform suffering into beauty. And maybe that is the saddest lesson his story leaves behind. Number 16, Peter Sellers, the man with 1,000 faces. Friends, colleagues, and family members frequently described a man whose identity seemed strangely fluid, constantly shifting depending on who was around him. The line between the characters he played and the person he was became increasingly difficult to define. For his children, that uncertainty created distance. Relationships thrive on consistency. Trust grows from knowing who someone is. But Peter often seemed to be searching for that answer himself. The tragedy of his story is not that he lacked love. It's that he struggled to remain emotionally present long enough for others to feel it. The world celebrated his versatility. His family often experienced unpredictability. Perhaps that's why his story feels so haunting, because many people spend their lives wearing masks. Peter Sellers simply wore more convincing ones than most. And sometimes the greatest loneliness isn't being misunderstood by others. It's losing sight of yourself.